in the 19th, that we were dealing with the force of life, which is not life force as a representative of the supramental truth consciousness. That was what we were dealing with. And in that, we were trying to show or to understand that all the derivatives here that happen to appear to our mind as if they were result of the inconscient are in fact supported, guided, and governed by a veiled truth consciousness. What to the mind appears as a chance world or world of accident or a world of inconscience only, when seen from this point of view, it appears that what we know as mind, half knowledge and half ignorance, is a movement projected for effecting the division of the infinite into the finite. It is a movement necessitated by, well, bringing the necessity of keeping the evolved egos or forms into which one soul has cast itself into, and to keep them separate in order to evolve a world of relations, a world of mutuality. Otherwise, if the unity alone acted without any necessity of an intervening principle of differentiation, variation, not division, that to the mind unconnected, the infinite appears as if separation and division. But the problem was to create first a conscious center in the inconscience, a center of consciousness which would cognize the world. That was the problem. And nature succeeded first by involving the physical, the vital, and the mental individuality as we know. And this individuality is the first cognizing center, subjective center of the whole inconscient world. Well, now, having created this individuality, nature has got to then preserve this creation and see to it that it does not again merge directly into the one without fulfilling its multiple function in the universal. That it must. So it has to guard these separately created egos. Not guard means keep the form separate so as they can realize the unity of soul and evolve a world of a pattern of relations, pattern of mutuality, a pattern in which interchange takes place so as to create a universe, a cosmos. Universe is not a manifestation of one element. Universe is a manifestation of multiple, infinitely varied elements into a world which at least has some homogeneous principle, something that holds it together. Otherwise, it's not a cosmos. Otherwise, it becomes a chaos. So, having created this, its interest is to see that mind is kept as an instrument first to give a shape to the infinite and afford it a finite form, and secondly, to keep the finite individuated forms with a demarcation, as I said yesterday, without division. You see, a demarcation is necessary for practical purpose in a world of matter. Therefore, mind will be then, though governed now indirectly behind the veil by the supermind, afterwards, when the supermind comes to the surface, mind will not be abrogated, mind will not be reduced to a position of non-existence either, or be rejected as an illusory instrument, but mind will be utilized for carrying out directly and consciously the purpose of the supermind, the truth consciousness. That will be its task and its office, function of turning the infinite into finite form, giving it a soul form, so to say, for manifestation of the infinite, and then to hold these separated egos together apart so as to create a world of relation. This will be its task at that time. Now, we were dealing with life. That was the problem, isn't it? That if mind is a veiled working of the supermind, what is life? And we try to see that life is not merely a something that is evil or delusion, or not something that is of the nature of insanity, but it is action of the eternal, movement of the conscious force of the eternal. It is the cosmic power which builds forms, energizes them by stimulation, integrates and disintegrates and renews the forms again. You see, brings the form into existence, again reduces it to to non-existence. So disintegration and renewal, that is the process of life. We saw two or three things, isn't it? That nothing in life that is manifested perishes, all renewed again and again. It seems to perish because there is a process of life. Death itself is a process of life. And so we saw also that all existence, wherever life manifests either in the plant, animal, or man, the characteristics are the same. Assimilation, taking, outside life into itself, assimilating the life, digestion and respiration, and so in processes. They are all processes of life and not life. That is what we were seeing yesterday. And it is a element which is present everywhere, even in what appears to us as inconscient. Life is present in the earth, in the material elements, because that is an expression of life. It is not devoid of life, because life takes that submental, or you can say subconscious form, but life is present there. If life was not present there, it wouldn't come into existence. That is the basis on which we try to see this problem of all pervading imperishability of life. Response to stimuli also is a sign of life, and so on. I think we have done with that, isn't it? Yes. And we were seeing about the existence of life in matter. In plant, it is only a nervous sensation and a response, indicating the presence of feeling of pleasure and pain, waking and sleep, and suffering and fatigue, and so on. And even in metal, the same tendency has been located by science as fatigue of the metals, and so on. Well, it is a universal energy manifesting itself as life, that is to say, conscious being projecting itself or flowing itself out into life movement, in which the transition from the inconscient to the conscious is effected. So life is a mid-term between the inconscient and the conscient. Life seems to begin with the inconscient matter and ends in mind, consciousness. So life is a transitional term connecting the two. Life is present in the matter as sub-mental life, not intellectual life or mental. It has the form of, a sub-mental operation of an intelligence and will in material forms, in atoms, in molecules, in particles, in elements. And it leads from there to a gradual rise of consciousness. And it seems to our mind to act as a connecting link between inconscience of matter and the evolution of mind. Between the two, life seems to be holding, so to say, the two in its grasp. Life holds matter on one hand, mind on the other. It's an intermediary power, and latent or submerged in matter. It is latent in matter, submerged. If matter was not living, it wouldn't support life, you see. If some element of life was not present, we cannot live on that. What matter? You see, life is supported by matter because some common, life force is there, which living organisms are able to assimilate from what appears to be inconscient matter. Mere inconscient matter has something, and that's why its power latent or submerged in matter, and it is actually delivered of its own force into, well, submental beings, the first preliminary, Buddhist beings that died out, elemental beings, and gradually, finally, into the emergence of mind with full dynamics of the life force. Now, that much we had seen, and therefore we see that life in plant, animal, man, same thing. Birth, you see, growth, decay, taking place in all the rung of life. In plant also, you see childhood, growth, and then maturity and old age. This throughout the thread of life, you see infinite rung of the ladder of life. You find the common characteristic running. The plant has in itself the essence of force of life, and that's why plant is able to supply life to all organisms. You see, and the common characteristic, as we said, was birth, growth, and decay, etc. Propagation of the seed also, maintenance by nourishment from outside. That's commonly, the nourishment from outside, dependence on food from outside, then sleep and waking, infancy, maturity, and old age. And these are characteristics which you see in all forms of life, infinitely varied though they might be in their expression. Still, the processes that seem to be common are well defined easily to our mind. Life is involved in matter, as we saw, and by a pressure of life from above, it gives rise to the forms of life. Material energy creates not groups but aggregates. See, in the insect world, you find a whole ant hill or beehive, if you take, you feel the first, instinctive beginning of collective consciousness. You see? In the beehive, anthill, the orders of the biological world, the vegetable kingdom, you divide the whole vegetable kingdom into orders, biological order, and each order has common characteristic. It's a group. So that the beginning of group life goes right up to, you see, from vital life, animal herd instinct and, the coming, gathering together of animals, to the working of instincts as a social organization, more perfect than even human organizations. You see, that is what Maeterlinck wrote in his book, you see, Study of the Ant Hill. He said that they exhibit a social organization which man has not yet reached. Perfection of it is there. The automatic instinctive working. But the root of collective life is to be traced there. And even in matter, where consciousness is not present directly, the pressure of this collective drive of the universal manifests itself in aggregations. Atoms, though not conscious, aggregate together. You see, are brought together and clasped, so to say, the same. And therefore, we see that life force takes there another grade, but it is the same life force in the atom. Universal operations, in a consciousness, and force is acting on and even in matter. So the first form of life is subconscious vibration, where the force of life is asleep, so to say. In matter, the force works only at vibration. Now, this vibration is really rendering of consciousness in terms of energy. That's all. It is consciousness rendered in terms of energy to us. It is consciousness. And there, the point to note is that this vibration is subconscious, indicating that life is asleep there. That's all. It's not absent in the sense of non-exist. It is there, only it is asleep. And when opportunity arises, when the pressure is exerted, when life comes into existence in the insect, in the amoeba, the small beginning of vegetable kingdom, the first, atom or you say unit of life, the protoplasm and the amoeba, which divides itself into more and more and more until it builds up the whole world, so to say. There you see the beginning, that life is released, first of all, from that sleep which it had when it was in matter. And then when second stage comes, it is a response to outer stimuli, which appears to be not a mental response, mental reaction, but submental, automatic, on a life plane itself. When you touch the plant, mimosi plant, you know that mimosi, if you touch, it shrinks immediately. It is showing the automatic response of the nervous system to outer stimuli, where mind doesn't seem to be present, but response is there, you see. Now, you take in the third stage when life evolves, you get a conscious response of the life organism to the outer stimuli. That is to say, in the human being or even in the animal, the response is conscious. In man, it becomes mentally conscious. In the animal, it is vitally conscious, where the beginning of mind has already begun to take place. I mean, the mind has begun to come out into expression in the animal already. Only it is vital mind and not intellectual mind or reasoning mind as man has got. It can't put two and two together and come to a conclusion. It can only judge of what happens and what can happen and act even what seems to be rational. The animal have got a vital rationality which is different from intellectual rationality. They have no questions, but they have perception. And perception gives them the connection between, well, the consequent and the precedent sort of conditions or cause and effect. You see what you call cause and effect. So if constantly a door is opened in a certain way, the animal at once knows that the this action is preceded by this action, and therefore it will automatically do it, not by a process of reasoning that this is the way to open the door. No, there is no such idea present, but it knows that this action and that action are connected. So it comes and puts his horn there and opens the door and gets it. That's all they do. They get in. You see, all right. It's not by an intellectual understanding, but a vital perception where the mind has been subjected to vitality, not yet freed into intellectuality, where the first question is, what is this? Why is the logic of it? The therefore become not present in the animal, you see. But they have an instinctive understanding of processes at work. And that is the logic of vital life rather than of mentality. You see, not logic of intellect, but logic of life. And they know that that type of life they can perceive from the human by contact with the human being. They get many human, qualities developed in the animal life. Animal becomes very humanized when it comes in contact with, especially the tame elements or the tame animals or the animals that are domesticated. They get so much contact with the human consciousness and get humanized to a great extent. And in some of their qualities, I think they are far superior to man. The dog and his faithfulness, I think, is something unsurpassable easily, I mean, in human life. It's not that we don't meet some human being, but it's very rare. Whereas to find an exception in dog is difficult. So that we see this development of this life force in this triple formation, isn't it? Now I think that brings to the end of the whole thing. Yes. Life as nervous energy carries the force of form as a sensation to modify mind. Now this is one perception is here. You take life at one end, it becomes nervous energy in the vital being, and when you say you see, what is seeing? Seeing is form carried to the mind as a sensation, is it not? You don't get the whole form inside, that can't be done. So what happens is the form is carried to the mind as a sensation by the nerves. Yes. Now form as a sensation is carried to the mind. What is the form? Material. Form is matter, is it not? Form is matter. Form of matter works as a sensation carried to the mind. Really speaking, it's not form only carried, but the force that is behind the form. So matter as a force or power is sending message to the mind and bring about a change in the mind. And then mind sends for the response, reply, which again can modify the form, means the material energy. Life acting in the subconscious matter, in conscious vitality, in conscious mentality, connects this inconscient material force to the highest development of its own expression, mind. Do you understand? When you see, as I was trying to illustrate, when you see, it is the vibration of the form that is carried. Form is only nothing else but energy of matter. Material energy expressing itself in form. This is material energy expressed as a cup. Now, this energy of matter is carried to my mind, not as material energy, but as a sensation. That is the task done by the nervous system. Nervous system is the expression of vitality connecting in conscience and consciousness. Life is connecting the the vibration of life here, or the vibration of existence here, and the vibration of mind somewhere else. So, life dominantly acting as life and working in the nervous system connects the inconscient energy of form and the conscient energy of mind. First, mind is modified. If you see something which pleases you, well, mind gets into a pleasant state. Matter has come and influenced you, is it not? You stand before the hill and you say it is nigh. It is matter that is actually manipulating mind. It is influencing mind, to put it at least mildly. It is influencing the mind. It is matter that is putting your mind into a different state. And pure matter, remember, there is nobody there to say that you please have this impression. Nobody. Isn't it? Yes. So matter modifies mind. In fact, that is what Kaiserling said, as I told you, when he saw the Himalayas. First time he saw, I could not have believed that matter, mere matter, is sublime. It is when he stood before the Himalayas he saw matter is something more than beautiful. It is something that strikes you dumb with awe. That, he said, I realized when I stood before the Himalayas that this is only matter. I mind, and yet I know what a sublimity, what an arrangement of form and arrangement, what the grandeur of proportion and the capacity to produce an impression on mind is tremendous. This is matter, modifying mind. Again, the result is that mind acts on matter as a response, because there's a conscious reception. Sensation in the mind is double way. One is the reception and the reply. Reception, that is double machinery is there in man, science, is it not? The sensory and motor nerve. You see, sensory nerve carries and motor nerve replies. Well, that is replies of the mind and not only of the sense. Reply is not only vibrations, reply is of a will that is independent of nervous system. The reaction that goes back saying this is good. Now that judgment is not in the sense. This is pleasant. You see, that is a mental act conveyed back again to the sensation, and with the result that the sensation can modify the mind, and mind can again react on and change the material condition of the form. Mind can send back its reaction to the sensation so as to change the condition of material energy. This interchange is established between mind and matter by life interface with an apparatus or a machinery or a technique of sensations which carries matter to mind and mind again to matter. That's some idea. To bring back the force of mind as will to modify matter. It brings back the force of mind. You say, there is a sensation of the river. Then mind brings back with reason and science. It says, now, if I can store up the water, and if I can do this, yes, then I can have electricity. Yes, that is to say, mind send back the response. First, it respond to the sensation, then it refer to its reason and try to see how to utilize it. All that operation comes back again to matter, and mind modifies the state of matter through the machinery of sensation which is provided. Now, 20th chapter I leave for the time being because it is a chapter which refers to, I'll give one schematic idea so that you may understand why I leave it. We have taken the supermind or truth consciousness more correctly, that is a better description. Truth consciousness. Now, this truth consciousness is veiled. Veiled to mind, veiled to life, and veiled to matter. It is behind the veil working now. We have seen that mind is a subsidiary working of the supermind. We have also seen life force or vital force is also a working of the presence of supermind which is working behind the veil. And this matter that we see is also a working of submental, you can say, submental operation of life, also of mind, and also of supermind. The existence of law in the realm of matter shows the working of a definite will, that there is law in matter operating, cognized by our mind, shows that there is here a will and also an intelligence at work in matter. And in matter, this expressed in life, this matter when it expressed first in conscience, then it is desire. This inconscience becomes death and it becomes incapacity. The chapter that I am leaving out is death, desire, and incapacity as elements or as functions that take place on the plane of matter. And each one is a distortion of the true working of the supramental. These are its expression in life. Matter, when it expresses itself in life and tries to control it or expresses itself there, then it becomes, return to its inconscience is death. Desire is its part, is the impulse to possess the all, and incapacity is power to take the whole of the omnipotence and manifest it. Well, when they are absent, then the opposite of it is felt by the living organism. Living organism feels the impact of matter as death, desire, and incapacity. These are the working of the element of inconscience in matter operating in the present world, particularly in the field of life. Particularly in the field of life, the inconscience works as an element bringing about the end of the organism, a constant devouring hunger of desire in all living organisms, not only man, all over the hunger is there, which manifests itself as desire. And incapacity to take the whole because the power which is given to this expression of life is inadequate to hold the infinite. And the hunger is for the infinite. Therefore, life when manifested here in terms of earth consciousness, here we are thinking of the earth consciousness. Not life in its purity, but life manifested under the domain of earth consciousness. Well, it is subjected to the almost overwhelming power of matter, which manifests in life as the necessity of death, compulsion of desire, and experience of incapacity. Well, that becomes the working of. And the existence of law there shows that it is not merely against something, but because the supermind operating there as a law dictates to this divided life and divided mind, working under conditions of ignorance, that it should be subjected to this condition. Otherwise, well, the evolving organism will not make an effort to overreach, go beyond the formula of mind. The necessity is that the organism that is manifested in life with mind must overleap the present formula. And if it can't manifest the Satchidananda, the delight, consciousness, and existence of the infinite now in terms of its material existence, then it must necessarily pass through a temporary phase of death, desire, and incapacity. It must pass through that phase in order to go beyond. This is a condition imposed by evolutionary process working in the medium of inconscient matter. It is necessary and a condition. So, and even in that working, the existence of law shows the operation of the supramental or truth conscious will. That is what this chapter means. So all the three we have seen are a veiled working of the supermind. That is the chapter up to 20th brings this subject matter to a close in one sense. mind, life, and matter. Well, all the three, the world in which we live is governed by veiled operation of supermind. Truth consciousness is there. Therefore, more important general conception that emerges out of it is that world is not a play of falsehood. One, that it is not anti-divine element that have brought this desire, death, and incapacity into existence. That it is a operation of a truth consciousness working under the conditions of material inconscience. It is not as it were now that there is desire or now that there is ego, well, world is ignorant, world is unreal, or man has no escape, or there is no chance. Well, that attitude itself is wrong. Wrong in the sense of being partial, takes only temporary condition as if it was permanent law. The conclusion that he, substantiate through all these long chapters is that this world, ignorant, full of problems, suffering, conflict, evil, pain, suffering, death, is a working out of an omnipresent reality. That even when not perceived, even when from behind the veil, it is the truth consciousness that is working. So that behind all the distorted operations and expressions of that, it is that which is really driving the course of evolution. Therefore, world has to be understood as an expression of the reality. And therefore, possibility of bringing that truth consciousness into, you can say, an open expression or an evolved, as an evolved element in the total process of cosmic manifestation becomes the problem for man. Problem for man. And next, therefore, is mind as manifested in life. And now we are taking the 21st chapter for the further subject. In the sense that we have seen that life itself is a parent of this death, desire, and hunger and things. Because this life is expression of infinite conscious force. And because it is infinite, it wants to possess the infinite. In trying to possess the infinite, it gets an infinite hunger of devouring everything. An infinite hunger of devouring everything. Well, that becomes its badge of what we feel as imperfection. But really, the drive is to express the infinite, to possess the infinite. So, life is the parent of this death, desire, and hunger and incapacity because it is a dark figure of the superconscious force. Life itself is a dark figure of the superconscious force of infinite existence, consciousness, and delight. It is here the dark figure operating and yet not completely so completely isolated as to have no relation. Therefore, it feels the drive of reaching out to the infinite all the time. And this effort of reaching out to the infinite of a small being manifested on the bigger ego, well, takes the form of insatiable desire. Hunger for everything. He wants everything, and it's right, because he is all, therefore he wants to possess all. Only he wants to possess in the egoistic sense by addition, you see. Possession by an outer act of seizing, so to say. Well, that the limited physical organism and vital capacity, which is also limited, it can't hold the whole thing together like that. It can only hold in an inner act of self-expansion. It is not possible to possess the universe, by an outer act of seizing it. It can only be possessed by widening the consciousness to include it within oneself. Well, that is what the solution is hinting at. But here, he is telling us first that it's a dark figure of the superconscious force, and its drive is towards immortality, towards infinite delight, towards omnipotence. That is what life is in its origin, is the truth consciousness. It is that. Well, it wants to become that here now. And in that, we see now a triple manifestation of life. Where does this life now tend to go? Let us see. Only take life now, because that is the fulcrum of the cosmic manifestation, life. You see? Life, you take life, universal life. First, manifestation, the second stage, and the third stage. Fourth, we will indicate as the tendency towards which it is going. The first state is infinite division. Life subjected to infinite division. Second, well, division is there, but also some sort of capacity to increase. In this division, first, let me put here all these elements. It is subconscient. Life first, subject to infinite division, gives rise to atoms. Gives rise to atoms because that is the limit of division, and it is subconscient. It is only physical energy. Life here becomes physical energy. Please remember, it is life we are dealing, not with material energy. Life becomes here physical energy. Yes. It is therefore blind, you can say. The force is blind. Physical energy is blind, but yet potent. Very powerful action. Because you can't resist the action of a material force, electricity or magnetism, light or heat. You see, potent action of energy in the physical world, and this is manifesting itself in the physical world. Now, it makes clear that this physical world is expression of life. You follow? You catch it all right? You see, life's first manifestation is to us, to the mind, of course. Infinitely subdivided existence, and that is atomic existence in matter here. And there it is subconscious. Atoms don't act consciously, but still they act as physical energy. All physical energy is conveyed by life manifesting as matter. And this physical energy is blind to our view, to our mind. But it is full of tremendous power. You can't resist it. It is omnipotent almost on its own level. Electricity or magnetism or heat or light, you see, they act very potent power. And that makes the whole physical world first divided manifestation of life. Life infinitely divided into material particles, giving rise to material energy, the first expression of life. The second is that in which it moves towards conscious mind. So, through conscious mind, this is, subconscious mind, if you like to call it. Here, mind was subconscious in the atom. It is moving towards conscious mind, and in the third, well, it evolves, mind, conscious mind. It evolves conscious mind. Now, in this movement towards conscious mind, we find hunger, devouring. As its characteristic, hunger in there, therefore, desire as the fulcrum, so to say, of the movement, impulse and desire, tendency to increase, expand, to seize and possess, you see, to possess. And therefore, the nature of this life is struggle. Nature of this struggle for life, you can say. Well, all the laws of Darwin are included in this second phase of life, you see. It only doesn't try to survive only, but also to possess and perfection, you see. For survival, not only for survival, but also for possession and perfection. This is what life wants to do here in the second stage when it is moving towards conscious mind, towards the increasing degree of consciousness. The third stage is when the mind is evolved. When mind is actually evolved, well, then it brings a new possibility of solution when mind is brought into existence. The third state is life is, it brings not only strife but association as a necessary element. It introduces as a principle of preservation of individual, even the individual here in life feels that his preservation also depends upon association. Mind brings this to this evolving life. Life that is evolving, life is made to understand, even individual life is made to feel that association is a principle for its preservation and progress. When life becomes conscious, evolves mind. And mind succeeds in convincing life, even individual life, that if you want to live and progress, well, you must resort to association. This is the second division. Here, and it accepts the necessity, acceptance of the need and desire for interchange. Here, the interchange is by force, under a blind impulse. Here, the interchange is intellectual, conscious, with understanding. There is interchange here, but that is an interchange under drive of passion and impulse. You see, in the animal life or in the plant life, there is interchange all the time of life force. But that interchange is not conscious and is not a result of an understanding and acceptance on the part and the need of understanding the need of association and preservation. There it works only as an instinct, a drive of impulse and passion, and from almost the subconscious level. Whereas here it becomes necessity of interchange and a desire for interchange and even self-giving. Self-giving in the form of love. Now, in the third process of awakening of life, life moving from subconscious to material physical world to create consciousness towards mind or a more conscious mind, well, goes through an intermediate stage of hunger, desire, and desire to possess and enjoy, and therefore through struggle and survival and possession and effort and perfection, comes to mental consciousness where mind realizes that even for individual life, association is necessary for preservation and acceptance of interchange and necessity of self-giving and even the expression, the experience of love becomes here a conscious operation of life. Remember, we are dealing with life. Fourth stage now becomes necessary. These three have been, so to say, passed by nature, by life. Life has gone through these three phases. The fourth is the one in which the fourth stage will be the stage in which the coming down of the higher consciousness will be, truth consciousness will operate. Now, truth consciousness holding in itself the principle of, knowledge or being means knowledge, conscious power, consciousness and power, you can say, or consciousness and energy, and delight. These will be the terms towards which life must now make a move. But two principles have emerged in this study which we have done. The two principles are, first, will of separate ego, will of ego, to be distinct. You call it, well, evolution of a subjective point of expression. You see, the will of ego to remain distinct all the time and guard its identity. This is what life does. First thing that emerges when you study life, the two things that emerge in the process of life evolution is emergence of a sense of ego, I, which constantly wants to preserve itself and wants to preserve its distinct personality and doesn't want to guard itself against all, annihilation. That is one. And the second thing is a compulsion is imposed upon it when it reaches the third stage. When it reaches the third stage, then a compulsion is imposed on this life. Compulsion is imposed, well, to fuse itself into others, something else than itself. This is two contradictory looking things, but it is true. The two things that emerge out of the three levels through which life has passed, the three, stages through which life has passed is first, the preservation of the subjectively evolved entity, individuality, and secondly, a compulsion to an individuality to fuse with others, a mutuality, a necessity of association. That is what is poetically put several times. That what is it? Solitude of Alexander the Silker, no? All I survey my right, there is none to dispute. Yes, you see, yes, that's it. Solitude of Alexander Silker, is it not?
Yes.
Yes, yes, that's right. It just came to my mind. I was thinking whether my name was right. The name that came to me. Well, there you see, what does he say?
Something all right.
Yeah, yes, and then he says that you know the the
Oh, solitude. Charm.
yes, oh solid weather where the sages have spoken of thy. You see, yes, oh solitude where the charms of which the sages have spoken, and what is it?
Better dwell in the midst of the light.
Love. That's right. You see, better to yes, yeah, that's right. The line is long gone in from my mind, but it was trying to come hard, and it's good you put it in. That's the correct condition. That is the imposition of this one that is put. You see that man prefers to live in the midst of alarms rather than to live in the solitary place, a horrible place. He doesn't like it because this is an imposition, compulsion to fuse himself into whatever else. It may be an ideal, it may be something, it may be a purpose, but more than his ego, whatever it is, it may be a person, it may be a group, it may be a nation, it may be a society, it may be ideal of bringing truth into life, or perfection into life, or justice into life, or democracy into life. But you are dealing with the group. You see, you are compelled to fuse and interchange, and mutuality is compelled. The reciprocity becomes the process. You see, at a certain stage when mind has been evolved by life. Now, third point is when nature has created the stable individual that was infinite to finite, is it not? That was the infinite to finite when nature has succeeded in creating stable individual, then she reverses the process. You see, then she wants from from the finite, she wants to go back to the infinite. From the individual is forced by reversal of the process. The first process was, as it were, you see, then she wants from the finite, she wants to go back to the infinite. From the individual is forced by reversal of the process. The first process was, as it were, out of this vast infinite to evolve a point. And then now when it has created a mental being, you see, mental life, she wants to reverse the process. In reaching the infinite, it first puts its passing through the universal or the collective life, you see. Through that it has to go to the truth consciousness. You see. She reverses the process when the ego is formed. From the infinite, the first labor was to create, all effort was to put all in this into operation, somehow or other to bring this into being. When this is brought into being, the process is reversed. And it is to pass to the cosmic or universal consciousness, to the truth consciousness of the infinite again. That is how this supramental operation is leading the whole belt of life towards the original truth from which the individual has been created. Now, and there, when she has reached this, the individual perishes and the aggregate remains. In the process of going back to that, you perceive the first truth of what they call communism, socialism, and all kinds of isms that are operating is there, that individual perishes in the process and the aggregate continues. In this process, aggregate profits by the perishing of the individual, by whatever contribution the individual gives, the aggregate, the group life, the collectivity gains. In the process of reversal, this is not the final stage. The mistake comes in when you raise the collectivity or the necessity of this universality to the highest truth. Socialism and communism go wrong philosophically and metaphysically when they posit a collective as a final, reality to be realized and final truth that is operating in the cosmos. After all, this collectivity is not divine, first. Secondly, it is not conscious collectivity in the sense of having a separate organization of its own in the form of a mind or a body. It is superimposed on the individual ultimately, isn't it? An individual can refer to a conscience or mind to decide what he must do. A collectivity has no referable point of, a consciousness to which it can say whether I am right or wrong. Well, you elect for 100 people and they sit down and say, we are the collectivity, and each one is an individual on whom the collectivity is superimposed, the national consciousness or racial consciousness or the humanity consciousness of the whole humanity. And they sit down and say, now we decide. It depends on their identification with the total, first of all. Very often the individual is egoistic even there. And his ego is not submerged into the larger collective ego of the race or nation or humanity until he becomes identified in the soul, not in the mind, not in the interest, not in the power aspect of the collectivity, but in the soul aspect of the collectivity. He cannot know. And this soul aspect, you will see if you study carefully, it comes out in existence or in operation only when there is a great crisis. This soul comes into expression of the collectivity when there is a crisis. When England is faced with war, forgets empire. It forgets empire. It says democracy, freedom of thought, association, and Atlantic Charter. You see, not in England, America, or any country. It is when the crisis is there that the individuals that compose the leadership are compelled to contact the soul of the race, the collective soul. And that collective soul is an emanation of the supermind, of the truth consciousness. It is not something false. It stands on the highest consciousness. It is based on the truth consciousness of the divine. Therefore, it is a personification or a personal aspect of a collective divine consciousness. It is necessary for the whole of humanity. Whatever contribution a collectivity has made is a contribution for the perfection of collective life of mankind. And it is at that time that you see what that nation's soul is capable of and for what it stands. It is then through the crisis that we see, oh, England is a great race. You see, that there you feel that it's a great nation. Because she could forget at that time this interest of empire and keeping up somehow or other. And Hitler actually promised to keep what he called the ramshackle empire. He actually said, you can keep your ramshackle empire. Yeah, no, said I won't. That is the spirit, and that is what you see. That is what ultimately brings the soul of the race to its fulfillment. There was a talk in Rotary Club in Bulawayo. You see, Bulawayo is South Rhodesia, South Rhodesia. It's a hotbed of color bar. And I was called upon to address those people, all Europeans of the South African type. All very happily tappen people, but not thinking themselves very, because they are keeping down the black people there, you see. So they think they are doing some wonderful job there. So unfortunately, they called me and I had to tell them plain terms, very many home trust. You see, I had to give that. And then one man had written some article on England's policy and policy of America and England with regard to Africa. And he made out a case that This is a wrong way of dealing with African situation. Africa will ultimately become a battleground between Asia and Europe. That was the reading he tried to give. And England has committed great mistake in giving freedom to these Egyptians, Indians, and all these other people, and so on, and that so on, so on, so on. So I told him, look here, do this rotation, so 45 or 30, 2 or 3 were even from Cape Town, South Africa. And so I said, look here, we are living 1,200 miles from the coast. I was inland, you see. And therefore, we are almost living in the 17th or 18th century, I'm afraid. Thoughts don't seem to come here, the recent and the latest development of human consciousness. It doesn't seem to come here. There are obscure corners of the globe where people hold to color bar and think that that is something wonderful. Like that I went. Then I showed that the writer Mr. Wilson has tried to say that England has committed a great blunder in giving freedom to India and getting rid of her empire. I think that history will give quite a different judgment because this man seems to read history with the telescope turned upside down, so that he looks to the same events, but they look quite disproportionate. It is. England, by its one act, has created history, an understanding to see what should be done as a collectivity. What must be done? It's not merely what is necessary, interest all the time. No, what must be done? And in trying to come to correct conclusion, well, you prove that you are in contact with the racial genius, as you call it, or we say the spirit of India, the spirit of England. It is something for which it has stood, and it proved faithful to it in the Second World War. Well, therefore, though she has materially lost an empire, I am perfectly sure that she has gained in inner stature, which is more important. After all, man fulfills himself not by money and not by possessions, but by growth inside, is it not? And I'm perfectly sure that England has gained a lot. Those years might have calculated. It might be as America does, for instance, enlightened interest, you can say. That, oh, perhaps they are doing these good things out of enlightened interest. But even out of enlightened interest, the drive that is there is of universal, oneness of humanity. Even when America wants to give aid to other people because of interest, that if they improve and correct their standard of life, we will be able to supply them more, goods and more machinery, not goods, even machinery. So it is enlightened interest to see that they also develop. But even that presupposes this sympathy with humanity, that you want to increase the standard of life of all people. This is universal movement, you see, and it is first thing that shows that humanity is already being one. It is becoming one. It has become one already. That is a sign. Well, that's the way to look at it. Now we are looking at this problem from the point of growth of life, and I was trying to tell you that those systems of thought or reconstruction of life on the basis of collectivity as the ultimate truth or reality will stop halfway and therefore give a false lead to mankind, because collectivity is not divine by its constitution. Collectivity is a truth which is in the divine. Well, collectivities, as they are constituted, they are as selfish, as egoistic, as full of faults as an individual, perhaps more, because its faults can ruin a nation. It is titanic, you see. One man committing mistake can ruin one family, or two families, or three. But one nation doing something terrible or wrong, well, ruins millions of people and brings difficulties to others who have nothing to do with their problem. So that the imperfections of the collective life have far-reaching bearing on vast masses of mankind, and therefore it is necessary in collective life to see that we do not put the collectivity in the place of the divine, because collectivity, though a manifestation of the universal divine, is not divine in its operation, and because it is vast, the proportions do not reduce its ignorance. You see, because it is vast, it can be vastly ambitious, it can be vastly egoistic. So it is only the imperfection of man, increased to a tremendous, colossal size. That's all. Yes. Not it. Yes. Now, therefore, well, a decisive change has become possible with the evolution of mind, where the compulsion of association has brought into being. The second stage was the hunger to possess, the desire to go on acquiring. Now, in the mind, it is found that there is an interchange necessary. So, there is a desire to give and receive. To receive. Also, now there is a impulse to give. There is an interchange established. There is a understanding that if one wants to possess, he must allow himself to be possessed. Well, love at its beginning operation, well, it begins first by law of hunger, where the organism or the individual simply goes on receiving and trying to impose and to dictate and to, well, to almost devour. That is mutual devouring. You can see that in nine cases, even in human life, not only the animal kingdom, but in the human life. The beginning of what people was, I quoted that poem, what man call love. It's Shelley's poem. You see, I cannot give to thee what man call love, but wilt thou not accept the worship the heart offers and the heavens reject not, the desire of the moth for the star, of the night for the morrow, the worship of something far in the sphere of our soul. Now there is the impulse is not merely it is you see, possessive tendency, it is devouring. Perhaps it is mutual devouring sometimes, but it is devouring all the same in the beginning. Equal giving and equal receiving. That is second stage. And the third stage is only giving and not receiving when the psychic being is in front. You see, when the inner soul is in front, then the process is only giving and not receiving. Not thinking of receiving at all, not calculating the receiving at all. That is three stages through which even this impulse that is imposed on the evolving, entity is carried out into operation. Three stages. The highest being that into which the individual flies into unity. You can say it throws itself into the unity. The unity, the individual throws himself into the complete unity there. It means the discovery of a greater self than the self outside oneself. That is the process of love, the discovery of a greater self than one's own self outside. Yes. That is to say, something that is not self is greater than the self. Isn't it? Yeah, that's it. That's the sign of the acme, the top, where this interchange reaches its highest point. Now, mind is now the dominant element in the growth of life and imposes its law on material existence. And mind also cannot therefore consent to be total devourer because it knows and sees and perceives with its capacity of limited knowledge even that to give is the best way to get sometimes. And it also imposes the law of growth. Well, and tries to tend and move the life force towards conscious unity in difference. This imposition of interchange with others, what does it mean? Why is the individual ego evolved after so much labor again compelled to reverse the process and move towards interchange with others? It is really speaking a movement of trying to realize conscious unity in difference. That's the law of Satchidananda. That's the law of truth consciousness. Unity in difference, isn't it? There, all individuality exists as a variation on the infinite one. The infinite one holds innumerable variations of its own self within itself, where there is no difference but only a variation or a differentiation on the one. Well, the same is the impulse now imposed on the evolving entity. That is to say, the ego here is compelled to admit necessity of conscious unity in difference. Difference is not abrogated. Difference is not regarded as insuperable obstacle to the realization of unity in the midst of difference. You see? So that is the movement towards the realization of the aspect of Satchidananda in life manifested in earth consciousness. This impulse of conscious unity in difference cannot be fully realized in mind. So long as the organism remains confined in mind, as an individual or even as a group, a complete realization of this unity in difference is not possible. It can be only possible by mind or life taking the fourth turn. We have seen life from the submental and subconscious to conscious, then to the mental, and it must go beyond mind in order to realize fully the impulse that is at work. The fulfillment of this can come only beyond mind because mind is only an inferior term of the supermind. It is only an instrument for descent of the higher truths into form to create individuality. And then ascent back again into the reality. That is the office which mind has to perform. Mind is an instrument for descent, so that the infinite existence of Satchidanand can create an individual, a subjective center of its expression. And when it goes back, when mind is then a step into the ascent into the reality, ascent towards the reality. For this truth consciousness is a step of descent. For the evolving mind, it's a step of ascent to the reality. And therefore, perfect solution of the problem is not merely by promoting the impulse of association, mere interchange, accommodation, or of ordinary idea of love. It must come by the fourth status to which the light must rise. The eternal unity of the many through the Spirit. Realization of one Spirit, eternal, present in all, foundations of the human consciousness in the unity and freedom of the Spirit. Freedom to have various self-expression of its own being operating on the basis of unity. Well, when one has risen to that status, then a perfect solution of the problem of collective life will be attained by man, by life. We say life, but man, but it's really life. Life has to go to the fourth, status in which unity and freedom of the spirit, creating infinite multiplicity, coexist on the basis of infinite unity. When that is realized, then the impulse of association and collective life will have reached its real fulfillment. All right. That's about that.
It's quite colossal. This whole thought is
Yes.
of collective consciousness, and it's very hard for us to envision this great expansion of consciousness of human being, humanity, yet greater than the individuals.
Yes.
Because it has its laws, it has its function.
These are the laws which we are studying now, remember?
Yes.
These are the real laws.
Yes.
All other laws are derivative from the mind. This is a law that is given to us, or these are the laws given to us by somebody who has the vision of the truth consciousness, experience of the truth consciousness, and also experience of the operation of the truth consciousness. So it is not unrelated to practical life. Most important part of the whole contribution of Sri Aurobindo is that not merely a abstract individual experience, but it is experience of a reality which he has tried to not only apply to himself but to a collective life. It is something which he has done so that it is something that can be done. Only we should not think we are now given the problem of the task of solving this problem. No, we are given the task of solving our own problem. You should not be overcome by the proportions. Naturally, when he wants to give you the solution, he gives you the vast cosmic background to see that that alone is a solution. The whole logic of it boils down to this, that don't look to any other solution because this is the solution. Other solutions are good on their own way, like palliatives. You see, you apply a remedy for a disease because you see that there is a boil, so you apply something and get rid of it. But unless the system is, purified and the possibility of the boil reappearing is not obviated, it will be there again. What he is suggesting is a radical remedy. And radical remedy, people don't want to try. It will be easily understandable. They don't want to try radical remedy. They want something I can do tomorrow. So he said, all right, then 5-year plan. Then you say lending out land and lease, or you do this or that. There thousands of things are there. I want to do now and here. All right, you do something now and here. Good. It is in the same direction. It is not opposite. It's all right. Even an opposition has to ultimately help this movement. We don't say that this is therefore they should not do what they are doing because they can't do anything else. So it is better they do something. See, they can't do anything else. So what's the use of telling them to no stop? They must do what they are doing. It's good. It's not the solution. It's all right. It helps a little way, a little push in the right direction. It's all right. Nothing wrong. But it's not solution. Solution is what he's pointing out. Because then he shows you the whole panorama of life. The whole of life and how it has operated up till now. It is not as if we are talking in the air. We are talking somewhere very well grounded in the perception of the world as we see it with our mind. That we see the material world, we see the animal world, we see the plant world, we see the human world, and we see the life as the fulcrum over which the whole process is proceeding. And it has reached the stage of evolving mental consciousness and conscious individuality. Well, now the impulse to perfection and impulse to delight, which is the driving force of the whole cosmos or whole process of evolution, how is it going to be realized? The impulse to experience of delight, perfect harmony, knowledge and will completely indivisible and harmonized in human life, individual and collective. But then one has to reach the higher stage. One has to open to the supramental consciousness or truth consciousness and allow the truth consciousness to descend here and govern life and mold life. We are thinking, or most people are thinking, that we will have to do the whole job. No. We are thinking that truth consciousness is important, which is not true. You see, the idea is that if we don't do, nothing will happen. No. If you open to the truth consciousness is dynamic. God is not somebody completely devoid of power. So if truth consciousness is consciously, allowed to descend, or an opening is made for it to descend, it will work. We depend on our sincerity and our aspiration, but more we depend upon the power that will work. You understand? We are overcome when you think, oh, I have to do so much. No, you have to do your bit. Yes, you have to do, and that bit, as I said yesterday, is quite enough. That bit is big enough. You see, that bit is quite big enough. That much bit, if you do, then the rest is done by the higher power, because that is an active power, a dynamic force. It is not as if it didn't know what to do or what world to create. It knows what world it is going to create. Man is to allow it. The difficulty is with the mind trying all the time to say that I know everything and I will do. Well, when that is removed, then the higher consciousness knows what is to be done. It will give the right guidance to this very mind, to this life, and to this physical being of man to create a mold for its own expression, for the expression of the truth consciousness, because it wants to manifest here. The purpose of the creation is the flow of the Satchidananda here, and it wants to manifest its highest perfection here. So it will be working. It will not be simply static and leaving man all the work that is to be done. Man's idea that he has to do the whole job is only partially true in the sense that he has to fulfill his part, which is quite enough. I mean, for him, it's quite enough.
Didn't you give that part over too?
Yes, that itself is a work also again.
You give it another way.
There was one Girish Chandra Ghosh, a disciple of Ramakrishna Paramahamsa. You see, there is a story, and authentic because it happened only last generation. So he used to say he was a drunkard. He used to drink heavily. He was one of the best writers. He was a very great dramatist and a very good actor also. In the beginning, he used to be act also very, but he wrote very fine dramas of devotion, and a very fine dramatist. But he was addicted to drinking. So he used to come sometimes drunk to Ramakrishna. And Ramakrishna didn't care. He used to come down and fall at his feet and sit down and so on and say he is hopeless and he is wrong and he is very bad and so on. Because yes, of course, you change if you want to change, you will change. Then he said, but you are there, why don't you help me? He said, yes, you allow me to help you, then I can help you. So he said, take up my burden. All right, if you give me your burden, I will take your burden. Then when Girish Chandra was on deathbed, he told his people that he told me to give my burden to him, but I could not give. I could not give. So you see, even giving burden is not easy. This is actual instance in Ramakrishna's life. Girish Ghosh, well known.
Well, maybe you could teach Kara giving.
And afterwards, I think he conquered that impulse. But one day, a bottle was brought there. And somebody said, even in Ramakrishna's company, there is a bottle of wine. So somebody said, there is a bottle of wine. He said, no, Ramakrishna said, no, it may not be wine, who knows? When he brought out, it was syrup. So we were all staggered. But every day, you can't demand that from the Supreme, but it can. Instance in his life, he had some experience and he didn't know whether it was genuine or concrete and true and whether it was. So he said to himself that if that is true, tomorrow on this plant, this Java kusum is red always. The Java is a red flower like that open. Red flower, which is well known. It's also medicinal plant, but the flower is red, blood red color, flesh red, very fine, crimson. So he said, on this plant, there will be a white flower tomorrow if my experience is right. Next day, there was a white flower. He wept. He wept. To have demanded such a thing was not right on his part, he thought, you see. But then it was there, I mean. But that could happen once in a lifetime and once in a crucial moment. Can't demand miracle as a constant act of maintenance of faith or idea or some conviction. It can't be done.
This slow evolution, this divergence through crises, through wars, through the impetus of great events that force us to have some unity in living. That will break down this dead mass weight of law that we face. Law is an essential instrument now, but we have so many laws that I think we're just buried under them.
Yes, that is to say, there is a need for changing the values of collective life. You see, the collective life is being shaken. It has been shaken by these two world wars, and it is not finding its right direction, except that nature is forcing the coming of unity on this collective consciousness is all over the world by fear and by interest and by many other factors, except the most important, the psychological factor of knowing that we are one and the world is one, which is very simple. It's evading. Man is evading it. It's ridiculous, but it is that. You see, the world is one and humanity is one. That's all. And as soon as the thinking proceeds on that line, you will see that problems will become, numerous problem will be there, but they will not have this aspect of conflict which it has now. The, acuteness of it and so on. It is because each one is still thinking in somewhere in terms of its interest and in terms of its own separate existence and so on. World is one and humanity is one. It is already one, I tell you. It is already one, but the difficulty is how to convince these people that it is one. It is a man who won't see the thing before his very eyes. He won't see it. The very acts that he is doing showing that the world is one. Still, they won't take it. In terms of all, for instance, it should not be, oh, there is unemployment in my nation, therefore, what shall I do? No. We'll say, how will all men be employed usefully? That's all. Same thing. You think in terms that we have got problem of, yes, low wages. You say, what are the reasonable wages for all men in the world? Always think in terms of all. Then the problem will remain, but then the solution will not be a solution brought about by conflict, by, what you call, tug of war, all the time pulling in different directions. It will be then the will of humanity put to the solution of the task. The whole of humanity will combine in that case, and therefore it will be a cooperative effort. The solution will take time to come, but it will be as if you are cooperatively solving a solution on the basis of harmony. There is no disharmony and conflict. And that is what the UNO can do. That is its real function. It will come to that ultimately. You will see. It will ultimately have to become the government of the world without a constitution. It will have to become a government of the world, a free association of nations, where the things are done for the interest of the whole humanity. And nobody is considered more important than others because his size is big or his power is great or his money is more. That is not the point. When these psychological factors operate, you will see the UNO itself will become a realization of the world unity on one plane at any rate, on international plane. It's already there. People don't see. Whether individual or collectively, yes, that's it.
My problem is me.
Wave of realizing this unity after the Second World War, perhaps that might ultimately come to something. But if a proper understanding is there, it might come quick. Proper understanding that ultimately this has to be done. Well, as soon as they realize that this is to be done, everybody will set to that way, you see, and not go on pulling in different directions. Then the thing might come much more quickly and be more effective, more efficient also. The organization will become more efficient in tackling questions. If you, the best solution that you think of is the bringing in of the truth consciousness into dynamic, of life, dynamics of life. You bring that into and allow it to work on life. Well, that is the most potent, power that an individual can bring to bear upon this problem. It's no use trying to, somebody wrote a book, I think an American wrote a book on the ethics of American foreign policy. And somebody asked me to speak about international unity and gave me this book. So I took this book as a theme and spoke. There is an international fellowship in Madras. It's an association of international fellowship, and they wanted me to speak. So I spoke and I said that It is no use trying to influence the policy of the government because government policy is laid down and it is not going to be changed by anybody trying to influence it. Government don't allow their policies to be influenced by anybody. They have their own policy. So what's use of trying this man trying to say that if you create American opinion, that will take how many years you don't know. The parties are already organized on their own, I mean, programs. And if that ethics does not find a place in their program, you can't influence ethics there afterwards. It can't. The parties have their own programs formulated and they work on that basis. How are you going to end? Government will not bring about international unity. I said that also. It is a consciousness that will work. You see, inner factors have to be evoked into operation. Psychological powers will work, not political and economic. And psychological power become irresistible ultimately. It is that. A change of consciousness. When that is there, the governments will have to bow to it. Not by voting. I mean, that is a process which will challenge them almost and say, no, we are not going to do what you say, just there. But if there is a change of consciousness, automatically the change will be felt there. So that it is a psychological change which is more important than either political action or social, movement or social programs. You see, the higher powers working is quite disproportionate to the point on which it works. You don't know, it seems to work only on here only. But its vibration and repercussions can be everywhere. You never know. You see, you are opening here now to your radio to New York, all right, or in London. Well, you think you are only receiving. Yes, but you see, it is all time in the air, and then anywhere it produces the effect. You see, higher power is much more, therefore, effective in its operation because it is under the veil. It's not known. It's not conscious, and yet not less effective because it's very, very, effective on another plane, and it's a power that is at work. It's not human power.